In this video, we are going to learn how we can implement PSR for autoloading in a WordPress plugin from scratch. So, for example, if you want to utilize PHP namespacing or MVC structure in your plugin, then this would be really helpful. I really prefer building my web apps or plugins using this approach as it keeps my code base streamlined, which in turn makes it easier for me to modify or extend its capability whenever required. This video will not cover how to properly integrate MVC structure for your WordPress plugin, but rather on how to use the namespacing logics. That being said, I will be showing how to properly set up a Laravel-inspired WordPress plugin from scratch in my next video. Alright, here I have a blank project open called WP-MVC plugin with just one file, which is just a git ignore, and a VS Code folder with just some PHP doc block settings, which is not relevant to the project. Now, to make sure we have everything that's required for this, which is just Composer, we can open our terminal and run a command called Composer, just like that, to make sure we have it installed. So, if you get an output like this, then that means we are good to go. But if you get any error or you don't see the same response, that means your system does not have Composer. So if you do not have Composer installed on your machine, you can go to getcomposer.org/download. For Windows user, make sure you set the path variable for Composer so that you can invoke it from anywhere. Alright, once that's done, we need to create this file called composer.json in the root of our plugin. We need this file because our Composer is going to read off of this file and register the configuration. So I'm just going to create a new file in the root. Let's call it composer.json. Here we are going to write down the autoloading logic for our plugin. So I'm just going to write it down and then I will be explaining it. And that's it. So right here we are asking Composer to use the autoload schema for our plugin with PSR4 standards of autoloading. And in here, you can call your namespace or your folder name whatever you feel like. But for simplicity's sake, I'm calling it app and app as my folder name respectively. Now, once that's done, we have to open our terminal again and run this another Composer command, which is composer dump autoload. Now, this command is going to create a folder in your root directory called vendor. And this vendor folder contains a file called Autoload and a folder called Composer. This folder is going to contain all the Autoload logics and class maps, which we do not have to get into right now, but all we have to worry about is this file called Autoload. As the name suggests, this file contains all the autoloading and namespacing logics that we are going to leverage in our WordPress plugin. And to do so, we have to require this file in our plugin. That being said, in this video, I'm going to require this file in the main file of our plugin. Okay, so let's create the main file for our plugin. We are going to create it in the root and let's just call it WP-MVC plugin, just like our plugin name. And it's going to be a very basic plugin with very basic plugin commit meta with the plugin name. Let's just give it a name called MVC plugin. We should also give it a version. For this video, I'm calling it 0.1.0. And this is always good to use this version convention for your beta or alpha plugins. And for your major releases, you can go with a normal convention like so. But let's stick to our beta convention. Also give it a description, a nice description, and the author. Why not? Alright, once that's done, we will require the autoload file from the vendor folder in here. So let's just do that. So it's in vendor autoload.php. And that is it. Once that's done, we are going to spin up our browser and go to the admin panel of our basic WordPress setup to see if everything is fine and we do not have any errors. I have it opened up already. So now let's go to plugins. Okay, great. We can see our plugin in here. Let's try to activate it. Great, no errors. Just a pro tip, always set the WP debug option to true in your WP config while you are developing a plugin or a theme. So if in any case our plugin is throwing a PHP notice or a warning, it would be visible in here and we will be able to fix it immediately. All right. So if you remember, in our composer.json file, we have defined our namespace and a folder name called app, which you can call anything. But we do not have this folder yet, so let's create it. Now, in this folder, you can have as many files or folders as you want, but it's always better to group your files inside a specific folder. I'll show you what I mean. So for this video, I'm going to create an admin menu for our plugin just below the settings menu. Now I'm going to do this by leveraging the namespacing and autoloading functionalities. So since it's going to be inside admin, or we can say it is admin specific, I'm going to create a folder called admin inside app folder. Notice the capital A for my folder name. I'm doing this because it is recommended in BSR4 standards that we start our folder name or class names with a capital letter. Alright, inside the admin folder, let's create this file called menuscontroller.php. Here we are going to create a very basic class boilerplate. I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar with this basic PHP class boilerplate, but our BSR4 autoloader is not going to identify this file because we haven't defined the namespacing for this file. So let's try to namespace it. Now, how do we start our namespacing? If you remember in the composer.json file, we have defined that our namespace starts with app. Now, these double backslashes are nothing more than a single backslash which is escaped by another backslash. So now we know that our namespace starts with app, which in your case can be anything. So now let's type in app in here. Now, after that, we know that menus controller exists inside the admin folder. So we can call it admin. Great. So menus controller is an admin folder which is further in app folder, which is what we have right here. So the folder structure is what we are following with our namespacing structure. Now let's start creating our admin menus. And for that, we are going to create a function, and let's just call it initialize menus. And what I like to do here is create an array of all the menu items, which makes it easier for me to edit in future whenever required. So we are directly going to return this array. Now, every key item in this array is going to be the slug for our menu. So for our main menu, the slug is going to be WP MVC plugin, which is basically the name of our plugin, and it will contain all the menu items such as page title, menu title, capability, I'm basically listing out all the arguments of the add menu page function of WordPress, so it's nothing fancy. So now let's add the function attribute. And we also have the icon URL and the priority. All right, great. So now let's start typing the page title. Let's give it a very basic page title here. Let's call it MVC plugin. And we are going to use the same name for our menu title as well. Capability, I like to give it as administrator. Function, now since we are inside a class, the function is going to be inside the array, and we will reference the class where the function is defined. So in this case, it's this class. And the second argument is going to be the name of the function. Let's just call it menu view. Icon URL and priority we can leave blank for now. Okay, now let's quickly create the menu view function. This is going to be a very basic menu view. Nothing fancy is going to go here. So let's just give it an h1 tag and call it the page title. And that's it. Now we have initialized the menu items, but we haven't written the logic where we are going to actually add the menu. So let's quickly write it down here. Function add menus. All right, so let's create a for each loop here. The key is going to be the menu slug as we have discussed already. So let's just call it menu slug here. And rest of the items can go in the menu variable. Okay. Now we are going to call the default WordPress function to add the menu page, which is add menu page. That's it. Now the first argument that it takes is page title. Okay, I'm just going to copy this to save some time. Second one is going to be the menu title. Third argument is the capability. Fourth one is the slug. So we can use the menu slug. The fifth one is going to be the menus callback function. So let's just call it function. The sixth one is the icon URL. And the seventh one is going to be priority. All right, it looks great. Again, we are still missing the action hook, which is actually going to trigger this function. So let's create a constructor for this class. All right, so in this constructor, we are going to add the action. And the action hook is going to be admin menu. Oops. And just call the function add menus. And that is it. Now I like to compact my code by putting the namespace in the first line with the PHP tag, like so. Okay, so now that's done. It's not going to change anything in the front end, as we can see, because we are not calling this file anywhere. We are going to call the menus controller in the main plugin file. So here we can use the use keyword to require or include any file that we want. Now, after the use keyword, we have to define the namespace of the file that we want to include. So in our case, it's going to be app admin and the name of the file, which is menus controller. So app admin menus controller. Now, since we are including this file, we can call it like so, new menus controller. And that's it. Now, let's take a look in the front end and see what happened. Oh, okay. We can see there are some errors. So this is what I was talking about. We can immediately see all the notices and warnings. Okay, let's try to figure out what we did wrong. It seems like the priority that we are setting in cannot be a string. Yeah. That takes care of the error, but it still does not solve our problem. Let's try to take it out of our array and let's see if that solves the problem. It does. So in our case, we were defining a false priority, but instead it needs to be a number. So if I give it 5, as you can see, we are up here. So let's just give it 90 for now. There we go. So this worked. Now if we click on it, we are not seeing anything. So we have to echo the page content for now. So this basically wraps up the video. We were successfully able to include the menus controller file using the PSR for autoloading and with the help of the PHP use syntax. Now, this was a very basic example to demonstrate how we can implement PSR for autoloading and leverage the PHP namespacing convention for a WordPress plugin. As mentioned earlier, in my next video, I will be showing how we can improve this whole structure and how we can properly call all these files in a more Laravel inspired manner, which is going to be really interesting. Since this video is already getting too long, I will be ending it now. So stay tuned for my next video. I hope this helps and thanks for watching.